Hello. Well, let's get this show on the road. It's good to be with you and speak to young people with open minds. My generation, unfortunately, you see, very often has closed minds. But there we are. I'm going to tell you the story of my life, and I hope that you'll get some benefit from it. Recently, I discovered that one picture can say everything. And looking for a picture to sum this up, I've come up with this one, A Crazy Pavement, because I think that really does summarize my life. And well, there we go. In all my 88 years, absolute nothing went according to plan. But during those 88 years, life is a learning experience. And I rather like this saying by Albert Einstein: learning is experience. Everything else is just information. And I commend that to you for starters. Anyway, let's begin at the beginning. This is where my learning started, Bede Grammar School in Sunderland. It was not in the 40s the best of grammar school, it wasn't the worst. I think Newcastle Royal Grammar School was probably better. And there I was nothing special. I was sixth in the class as I remember it. I was certainly not very good at sport because I had flat feet. I had one achievement, however. You'll notice there that on the left-hand side, there's a boys' school, on the right-hand side, the girls' school. Well, I was in the debating society there. We had a small little group of people, and then I had the idea that we could link up with the girls' school. Well, it's amazing. And suddenly we had very large audiences, and that was obviously very good for me to speak to a large audience. And I suppose that's what I'm trying to do now. Anyway, the age of 17, what do I do with myself? And that's a family furniture business. It didn't appeal to me. My father at the time was, when he was waiting for customers, would play patience. I didn't fancy that. So that was my ambition, to become a barrister, get a degree in Oxford if I could. And I observe at this stage that, just to alert you to it, that my wife Ros ended up as a much better lawyer than me, without actually earning anything for it. She essentially had a general degree when I married her, and she worked in the Citizens Advice Bureau in the Tribunal Unit in Sunderland until the local Labour Council, of all things, closed it down. Anyway, in the Tribunal Unit, she felt that helping her clients, if she had a degree, it would be beneficial. And she got this law degree. It was a good deal more practical than the degree I got in Oxford. And apart from that, I mean, she's a better lawyer than me because she had a meticulous eye for detail. And that's something I don't always have myself. But anyway, I jump. And I jump in more ways than one, because the first thing that happened that was a bit of a shock to me was this, that I got TB. This for me was the equivalent of your COVID, and or it was my COVID, if you like, at the time. And how that happened was this: that my aunt took in a refugee from Germany. You see there, the Quakers saved 9,000 Jewish children in the Kindertransport from Hitler's gas chambers. Well, this guy taught me chess, and he also gave me tuberculosis. And I was caught on a mass X-ray when I got myself to Oxford, and I lost a full year. And I ended up in a sanatorium in Northumberland. But at least I used the year to type. And that was very beneficial as time went by, as you can well imagine. But anyway, I then got myself back to Oxford, and I go to Merton, and there's a picture of Mob Quad, which is the first quadrangle in Oxford. And so it was a prestigious college. And I enjoyed my stay there, but I have reservations about the degree. For example, I spent too much time on Roman law and no time at all on comparative law. But that's just one thing I anticipate as we move on. And I did then get myself qualified relatively quickly, actually, and became a barrister. And I then went to Manchester and I got into the chambers of C.N. Glidewell. Now, he was a very fine lawyer. And for a year, he drives me around planning inquiries, because the chambers essentially were planning chambers, although they did other work as well. It was a great experience seeing a top lawyer in action. And I had a benefit of a year of it, which was no bad thing. But the chambers themselves, I was very fortunate. C.N. Glidewell's son is Ian Glidewell, and he became Lord Justice Sir Ian Glidewell. The second in command in these chambers was a guy who became the Manchester City coroner, Donald Summerfield. There was another guy who became a High Court judge. Well, such was the chambers at the time that a bit primitive, because I shared my room with two other barristers. And one was Geoffrey Vaughan Davis, who was the Liberal candidate for Manchester Withington. And there were actually a lot of Liberals in these chambers. And he actually persuaded me to stand for the council in Withington. And I almost got in. I don't know what would have happened if I had. But anyway, I didn't get in. But the trouble was I spent too much time with the Liberal Party and not enough time with law, which was not really the right way I should have attacked becoming a barrister. But before I depart this, I should just say that my experience of the law is more from as a client than actually in chambers in Manchester. And what I have to tell you is not good. I'm afraid over the years, I've discovered that some lawyers are good, but too many are not. Some lawyers see their clients as a cash cow to be milked. They drag the cases out as long as they can. Then I have something even more profound. I suddenly realized that you don't need barristers and solicitors. Barristers and solicitors put up the price and slow the process. Now, they didn't tell me at Oxford that in America, they just have a single profession, and they call them lawyers or attorneys. And as a result of all of that, I have to tell you that if you want equality before the law, forget it. Anyway, that's the law for the time being. And this man took me over, Joe Grimmond. Well, he was my great hero at the time. And well, this is one of his speeches. In bygone days, commanders were taught that when in doubt, they should march their troops to the sound of gunfire. I intend to march my troops to the sound of gunfire. Well, I'm very sorry, never made it. And that was another of his saying, break the mold of British politics. We didn't do that either. Well, nevertheless, at that time, I was very enthusiastic, and I got a job as the right-hand man for the secretary of the Liberal Party organization, Douglas Robinson, who was bringing the Liberal Party into the 20th century halfway through it. And my job was to serve the national executive of the party council, and organize the annual assembly of the party. Now, it was a great time. I mean, the high watermark was Orpington when I got into the count. I shouldn't have been there. That was when Eric Lubbock had a sensational victory. But the fact is that in practical terms, it gave me my introduction to graphic design, because I was introduced to the party's first graphic designer, Barclay Powell. You see there one of the things he produced. Well, that stood me in good stead ever since, because, and I commend it to you, that it helps when you're presenting yourself, your company, to know something about graphic design. MBA courses should include it, in my view. But Liberals, well, I stayed with the party after I left, which I'll come to that in a moment, but I just have to observe this, that they slip, unfortunately, on their own banana skins. I came to recognize that the Achilles heel of the liberal is naivety. And quite often and they're not the only people who are, there's sometimes too self-righteous and self-complacent, and they have tunnel vision. And this is probably why they are where they are today. And while I'm talking about politicians, let me not escape the rest of them. They think that everyone else likes or should like what they like, and everyone else doesn't. And most importantly, they fail to factor, this is not just politicians, but civil servants as well, they fail to factor in human fallibility, including their own. Well, that's all I want to say for the moment about politicians. I'll come back to them a little later on. So what do I do with myself? Well, I've got to earn a living, and my father is ill with cancer. My mother's keeping the show on the road. And well, I think I better go back and make a stab at that. I've got good judgment. I've got good taste. My choice should be welcomed by the buying public, and I can improve the displays with spotlights and settings and so on. And I even moved the store into the center of Sunderland. Well, 1973. 1973, for those who know these things, was a very difficult year. Problems yet again in the Middle East, and things were not going all that well. But I had a piece of very good fortune. The two friends of mine who were manufacturers came to me and they said, "You've got it all wrong." They said that people don't want your choice; they just want choice. And they want a bargain, and you can give it to them, and you need a manager. And I said, "Well, I'm the manager." They said, "No, you're not. You're the owner." So they helped me to headhunt a manager, which was, as you will see, one of the best things that happened to me in my life when I found one. And I then subsequently began to discover that retail is detail, and not just retail is detail, everything is detail. And the other thing I came to discover as I got involved with this, and that is that people who are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and streetwise with commitment are often very much better grounded than the people who are bookwise and clever in the libraries of their own minds. Probably the weakest manager came my way and a degree, but that's the true story. Anyway, as a result of this, 1976, I opened the Sunderland Sweet Centre. Later, well, it was when other people were doing the same sort of thing, and we were looking for a name special to ourselves. It was actually in the Bath when I came up with SCS, not Sunderland Sweet Centre, but Sweet Centres, and that is where I discovered what capitalism was about. I discovered that old Karl Marx has got it terribly badly wrong. When he talks about profit being exploitation, it's nothing of the sort. It's a measure of efficiency. And when it works, it's a win-win-win situation. It does require the intervention of the state to write the rules, like the Factory Act. But that's the role of the state to write the rules for it. And with profit you can grow, but I mean, without profit you die. Well, I just draw a comparison with what happens when the state gets it wrong. Well, they have another public inquiry. Then nothing changes. So what about SCS today? Well, there it is. It's amazing. It has 1,707 employees, the latest official record, and generates £225 million in sales. When I came to the company, it had a turnover, I think, £50,000. It's a win-win-win situation, a win for the people who work in it, a win for the customers, obviously, because they're happy customers, and a win for the manufacturers as well. Well, there you are. I mean, you know what Karl Marx would make of it, I'm sure. And what I came to see, and I put this to you, that some words had huge relevance. Commitment, I think that was probably the most important word. Everyone was committed to make it a success. Loyalty, well, the fact is that the people who started out often in the warehouse, and they moved on from the warehouse to sell and then to manage, and even one made it to a director. Well, they were loyal to the company, and the company was loyal to them. And you got continuity, which was very valuable. Kaizen, I don't know how many of you know that word. It means the philosophy of continuous improvement. Well, we subscribe to that for sure. I mean, the computer is perhaps the best illustration, because learning to live with a computer in its early days was quite a battle. And most important of all, I put this word mutual respect. The management respected the workforce, and the workforce respected the management. That, I tell you, is pretty key. And I do ask whether those 4 words can be applied to the public sector. I flagged this up just so that you know. A-Share is not me. A-Share is the founder of the company. He actually died before I was born, and I never knew him. He actually came. He escaped from pogroms and anti-Semitism in Riga in the late part of the 19th century. I really don't know what he'd make of all of this today. I guess, as far as the company's concerned, his eyes would twinkle a little bit as they are here. Anyway, that's by the way. So let's move on fast. The company's grown in the Northeast, and at the age of 60, I decided to retire. But again, nothing goes according to plan. So I missed. I planned to have a quiet, stress-free retirement. And most important of all, I decided that my risk-taking days were over. I was no longer going to be an entrepreneur. I mean, I don't know whether you realize that being an entrepreneur can be a risky business. Apart from anything else, you're signing long leases on properties. And I didn't want any of that. And my manager, Mike Brown, now departs the role of manager and becomes an entrepreneur, and I sell the company to him as on a management buyout, and he has all the rewards and all the fun of it, if you like. And I went for my quiet, stress-free life. Well, I put there Rotary. I was a member of the Sunderland Rotary Club, and I wouldn't have thought that was any threat to it, but by golly, we'll see it was. And this was the problem. Essentially, in the Rotary Club, I met Fredwin Haynes, who was the head teacher of that school, and he invited me to be firstly the governor and then the chair of governors of the school. Well, I must tell you that I made no contribution to it being a great school. I'm going to flag up some of the pictures I've still got on record, which will show you what a fine school it was. And before I begin, this is what I learned on my ride through the next few years. The first thing I've learned is to rank diversity in the pursuit of excellence above the pursuit of equality, and don't project for others what you want for yourself. An awful lot of people do that all the time. So let's begin. Just flick through some of these pictures for you. They say everything. That one in particular. Some Pupils at the school had won awards at the Paralympics in Sydney, and the whole school rejoiced at their success. I think they got silver medals. Look at their eyes. Success was the name of the game for all the people who had difficulties and disabilities. And more than that, the kids learned art, and music was very strong in the school. They had the pans, the steel drum band was in demand. The parents used to ferry them around almost every week. There was a hydrotherapy pool, which was very good for kids with physical disabilities. And you can see they were happy kids. Helen Fennick, a blind student, she got an award for painting a windmill. Physiotherapists, school nurses as well. And Ofsted gave it glowing reports, a school with many outstanding features, highly motivated kids. I mean, I saw, it was an all-age school, which wasn't everybody's taste, but I saw the older kids encouraging the younger ones. And that's important when you've got physical disabilities. Teamwork, a strong feature. Pupils' moral, social, cultural development. I did tell you this, I didn't see much bullying going on in that school. Can't say that today in mainstream. And pupils' good behavior is an outstanding feature. When appropriate, pupils assist each other in work and leisure. That's what I was saying. Can you say that of mainstream schools, I wonder? And that was what Fred Whitehead said to me. We can give kids something mainstream schools can't, and that is time. Never forgotten that. Well, I say life now is very much a learning experience for me, because the LEA called a parents' meeting and said they wanted to close the school and give the kids mainstream school experience, mainstream school. And there was a vote at the end of the meeting. The parent governor asked for a vote. Not one hand went up in favor of it. But that was what it was going on outside the school at the time. And it led to the closing of 100 special schools, asserting children's right to go to mainstream and equality of opportunity to go to university. Well, that was not what the parents and the kids and the teachers wanted. All they wanted was opportunity. And that was what, in fact, the school offered. And something else, which we'll come to later on. And here you had a straight conflict, because the kids have got rights to go to mainstream, but the parents had rights as well. They see a statutory right. The statement is maintained when it was under the Act for the child must be educated in a mainstream school unless that is incompatible with the wishes of his parents or the provision of efficient education. The school had support from the local medical committee. The doctors all said that I'm therefore writing to add our support to your efforts in resisting these plans. The consultants, now this was very interesting. The consultants used to come to the school to see their patients, and that was hugely beneficial because they were able to see them along with the teachers and carers and physios and the school nurses and so on. That made an awful lot of sense. I suspect it doesn't happen today. And we urge those responsible to reconsider their decision. You know, much did the local authority do anything about that, because they pressed on to close the school. So there was a battle royal, and I could actually have a role to play here. I was able to persuade an advertising agency to donate their services free, gratis, and nothing to the school, and all the material that you'll see here was provided by them. And I also suggested that they shouldn't go for a petition, they should go for reasoned objections. Petitions you can shred, reasoned objections are difficult to deal with by the authority. And there it was. They actually got over 14,000 of them. Well, the school was very well known and very respected. The local paper, the Sunderland Echo, backed their campaign. And here it was. Just look at it. They even went to London. They were lobbying David Blunkett. And you'll see at the bottom, my hero. I wrote a play, I'll refer to it later on, called Death of a Nightingale. That's Ashley Ritchie then, Ashley Watts now. And, you know, there was this great campaign. And, well, there were challenges there because they attacked our money and they made it difficult for kids to come to the school. And there's their official plan to reduce statements by 60%. Because only parents with statements for children with special needs have a statutory right to opt out. And that was the plan. And we also had common law on our side. There you see again a judgment that not enough for school to be merely adequate, it has to be appropriate. Well, speaking of the policy generally, I really don't think it was the right policy at all. I don't think they anticipated that bullying would come to be such a plague that it is. And there you see it on the left. When it comes to bullying, 9 out of 10 kids with special needs bullied in mainstream schools. And they didn't get it right so far as the mainstream schools are concerned, because they didn't save any money for sure, because they've had to employ well over 100,000 non-teaching assistants at £15,000 a year a time to help the teachers in mainstream cope. And these NTAs have been called sometimes amiable mums. Well, certainly know whether, I'm sure they are very beneficial and helpful, but the fact is that they can never be as good as specialist trained teachers and carers. And so today, this is where Barbara Priestman School is. At least it's not a housing estate, which it looked as though it might be, but it's no longer for children with physical disability. I hear on the grapevine that hydrotherapy is no longer being provided, and it now caters for children on the autistic spectrum. Well, that of course is a good thing, so I rejoice in that. And well, life is a learning experience. This is when I come across this saying by T.S. Eliot for quartets. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Well, you see, I'd always thought that the purpose of education was really something to do with equality of opportunity for everybody. But I came to realize that equality of opportunity wasn't just equality of opportunity to go to university, I should say, was what education was all about. Well, I came to realize that it was not just a question of it not being relevant to the lives of many kids with special needs. I come to realize that when it comes to the whole school population, when you think about it, half the school population go to university. That's the plan, that's the hope. What about the other half? I mean, they're being educated to fail. And what they want is essentially opportunity. So I have some questions. for Times Education Supplement. I've been taking the Times Education Supplement for many years. I don't know quite why, but I have. And I put to Times Education Supplement these questions. Are schools there for the children, or are children there for the schools and for social purpose? For me, they should be there for the children. And in education are equality and diversity companions. A lot of people link them together. But what happens when they're in contention? Who should win? And for me, it's diversity every time. And I do say this, that one size most certainly does not fit all. And I'll give you a further illustration. When I was at school, nobody suffered from attention deficit hyperactivity, or at least if they did, it was never diagnosed. It did not exist. And today in America and in Britain, millions of kids are being prescribed Ritalin in order to deal with attention deficit hyperactivity. But I'll put a thought to you, and that is, could it be that some of them, just some of them, in fact, are throwing a tantrum because they don't like the curriculum, which is leading them to fail their exams? And I'll put another thought. People chatter on about social mobility, and then to give them this equal opportunity to go to university, you have to have many of them have to have a debt running up to 40,000, 50,000 pounds. In totality, in the UK, the debt is £1 billion. In America, it's $1 trillion. Well, debt enslaves. I do tell you that. It stops you. It stops you giving in your notice if you're asked to do things that you don't like to do in your work. It's a form of slavery. And I got to Oxford on a state scholarship, but those who believe that if everybody can't have scholarships, nobody can have them. What a load of baloney. In fact, there should be many more scholarships, and they should be provided by the firms and by the industries that people are going to ultimately to work for. And the state should provide them as well, because scholarships and bursaries encourage people at school to work hard to get them. Where does all this lead? Well, in my experience, I've discovered that you can be very successful in your life without a degree. And by success, I mean comfortable in your life, is liking yourself is successful. And no one more so than Ashley Ritchie, now Ashley Watts. I was present at her wedding. She is a remarkable lady. She took her husband to Dance City in Newcastle, learned to dance at her wedding. Then on the right, Leslie Sheraton. Now, Leslie was trained by my mother as a clerk. She became my PA. She became PA to Mike Brown, the manager, and she's now the longest serving member of the company and assistant company secretary. And she didn't go to university. This is a part of my life I haven't referred to, but I had an involvement as chairman of a care home. And you see the lady next to me there, Christy McNicholas, another great success story. She retired after 17 years as manager of that care home, and she was absolutely brilliant at it. And she hadn't been to university. And there's a picture of Mike with Leslie. We were actually celebrating her 60th birthday. As I say, I'll tell you a little bit about Mike. Mike came to me and told me how he started his journey in life as a vacuum cleaner salesman. And he went on from there. Now, he always had a bigger car than I had, and I never begrudged it to him. And today I think he wants horses. He owns horses. Well, well, I never had any ambition at all, but it helps to have some ambition as well in life, because it gives you a focal point for what you want to achieve. And he has had a rip-roaring success with his life. But I treasure this picture. This was again the picture taken at Ashley's wedding. On the left, a lady who became the head teacher of a school in Gateshead. She was an English teacher, Jane Fraser. And on just the right of me, Ros Mearns, who was responsible for music. Absolutely brilliant teacher, inspiring teacher. And then right of her, Trish George, a parent governor with 2 kids at the school. So this is what I came to learn. I'm not a great one for prayer, if you like, but I do recognize when God exists. And I've seen caring in hospitals, my own, often enough. And I've seen it in special needs. I've seen the presence of God in special needs schools. I've seen it in care homes. It's very real. And in my view, God is the joy that people of faith have in common, not what makes them different. Don't think enough of made of that. And I tried to get that across in my play, Death of a Nightingale, in a play called Everyone Has a Mountain to Climb. I think you can, the fact that it's an inclusive God, you can sense if you listen to music. That's why I put a music lesson into both my play, Death of a Nightingale, and also a new play, which is still to be presented by somebody, Everyone Has a Mountain to Climb. Listen to the voices of Ladysmith Black Mambazo, listen to Tibetan monks chanting, listen to Paul Robeson with a spiritual, or a Jewish cantor, a chassan, a holy choir, or listen to the cello of Sheku Kanu Mason playing Kol Nidre. You'll sense the presence of God. And then when you meet your friend on the roadside or in the marketplace, let your spirit in you move your lips and direct your tongue. Let the voice within your voice speak to the ear of his ear. The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, a book that I commend to you. And as I said, I do urge you to recognize that it is better to be streetwise than book clever. A smart man knows that a tomato is a fruit. A wise man knows not to put the tomato into a fruit salad. And I leave these thoughts for you. We're equal only sometimes, unequal most times, and always different. And shoes should fit people, not people's shoes. And finally, that it's forget about parity of esteem. What's important is self-esteem. Now, you've got to make some changes to achieve that. You need to have a second track for bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, an alternative curriculum. And universities should be there to provide one-year courses for these kids. And Leslie Sheraton said to me that one of their directors recently went for a one-year course. I'm sure that the company paid for it in order just to fine-tune his performance. And one-year courses in languages or one-year courses in management can have a great value and paid for by the companies concerned. And as I said, end student loan dependency. I think that's extremely important. And just to give you some idea of what I'm talking about, let me show you what I think a lifetime curriculum would look like. Let's just spend a little moment on this before I conclude. Computer and the internet. Well, no one can exist today without it. Keyboarding skills, but it should include chess and bridge. I mean, for me, in the last year, being able to play chess and bridge online has been a huge bonus. Domestic and family skills. Well, I've recently started to cook, and it's a great thing to be able to do that. Cooking is not just a female pursuit, but I think that's been around for a while. Understanding things like the power supply, DIY skills, first aid and hygiene, living with a partner, all of these things should be included. Music, art, and design, well, I've already talked about them, but the benefits of those last a lifetime. Sport and games, well, why not? Monopoly and Trivial Pursuits can be valuable. Culture, including human rights, modern history and literature, including poetry and drama, and how other people in the world live. Well, they've knocked poetry out of the national curriculum. It's bizarre. 2 conversational languages, which would be invaluable in today's world, in the hospitality industry and in the caring profession. I remember being in Switzerland once, and the waitress in the hotel, she was multilingual, and she moved the crockery silently. You can be a professional in any walk of life, not just by virtue of being in one of the professions. Health and safety, including diet, ahead of obesity. People, it's a very serious matter, this, because the great danger today is childhood obesity, which leads to diabetes later on in life, and you can start dealing with that at school. Faith, I've already mentioned that. Understanding the world's religions, why people believe and why they don't. And the mutuality of respect, that if people respect each other, they don't kill each other. And then, of course, Greta Thunberg stuff, the environment. So there's plenty there in an alternative curriculum for those who are not going to university. And you can learn some management skills, no doubt, at the same time. And the aspiration is not a degree, it's a 5-star award. So that if you're going for a job, you take that with you when you go. Now, I say all of this in memory of Sir Ken Robinson, because a lot of what I've been saying is not original to me. I've been following Sir Ken Robinson, as a lot of other people have. Sadly, he died just a year ago. Not surprised he emigrated to America. But let me close with some of the sayings of Sir Ken. If you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with anything original. The fact is that given the challenges we face, education doesn't need to be reformed, it needs to be transformed. Creativity is important as literacy. And then last of all, education and training are the keys to the future. A key can be turned in 2 directions. Turn it one way and you lock resources away. Turn it the other way and you realize resources and give people back to themselves. Well, there you have it, my life. I think you can see it is, as I said, totally unplanned and unexpected. The last thing in the world I expected was that I was going to write and stage a play in London, Death of a Nightingale. But that seemed to be the only way that I could protest against the zany ideologues and the petty dictators and their human shields. I've got here a little quote from the play. The Tracy in the play is Ashley Ritchie, and Tracy in the play says, maybe it's because they think that what's right for them is right for everyone else, when it just isn't. And then they go on to think that everything else is wrong. If that is the reason, they make a big mistake. When you think about it, isn't it a bit arrogant, a bit blinkered, aren't they? How do you say it? Sometimes just too clever by half, certainly too clever for our good. So that was how I registered my protest. And there it is if you want to follow this up. There's the book, and my website has got it all, and plus a bit more as well, www.deathofannightingale.com. And there's the end of there's my crazy pavement of a life. Well, there is an end to it. It's not over yet. And I just leave you with that. This is currently what occupies me, the silly little cycle lanes on Gosforth High Street in Newcastle, and the people who are responsible for them, and the people who help them. I mean, it's ridiculous. They're ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, a final thought for you. Life is interesting on the margins. I've been very lucky in my life. And I think quite often the luck came not just doing what I had to do in life, but where I was operating on the margins of it. And I commend that thought to you. And I wish you well. It's not going to be easy. It's a changing world, and you have to be prepared to change with it. Wish you all the very best of good luck. And thank you very much for listening to me today.